All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am istherenoonelse, and today's video, Karaoke Sora, Karaoke ESO, aka my son, unleashed a war today, and I love him for it. He posted a video today that I thought was very good, and it was talking about Wretched Vitality. And his point was Wretched Vitality is just not a needed set. I will provide a link in the description. By the way, guys, Kuro and I are good friends, or friends. If Kuro, if we're not, let me know so I can retract the statement, and then we can go to war like you've never seen. No, in all seriousness, him and I are good friends. I agreed with most of his video. There was a few things that I disagreed with. I wanted to talk about that in this video. I wanted to show some comparisons, and yeah, I'm going to provide a link in the description to his video. You should definitely go check it out. I think it's a good video to check out. But yeah, let's just talk about it, and let's talk about what he said. So he went through and talked about Wretched Vitality, and basically it's a new set available in this recent DLC. It gives you a ton of recovery. It's one of the most stat loaded sets recovery wise in the game that you can back bar, and it's crafted and it can fit on just about everything. And his point is the set's it's one of the worst sets in the game. You can't, don't run it because there's just way better options. And he provided a couple examples, and I agreed with it. I agreed with most of it because it's true. On the vast majority of builds, Wretched Vitality is just not useful right now. This is the type of set to keep in your mind, in the back of your head later, for if they ever increase the cost of Vampire Stage 3 and you want or need recovery, or if they just increase the cost of abilities and say, hey, you know what, in PvP sustain's going to be different, we're going to go back to this to where you don't have infinite sustain as easily. That's when you might want to look at a set like Wretched Vitality. On the vast majority of builds, I don't think this is a great set. I really don't. But there's a few different ones I had ideas for, and this is why I wanted to try it and why I've been testing it. Classes where you're going to utilize magicka dumps. So for example, if I'm running a medium armor stam DK, and I haven't compared stam DK, but oftentimes I don't run, recently I haven't run Igneous a ton, because if you're running Igneous in Cauterize, for instance, it's a huge drain on resources, and so from the magicka perspective, and so having a little bit more magic in that situation could be more valuable, especially now that Stam DK you can use Molten Whip, and Molten Whip is a magicka cost ability. If you want to finally whip people on Stam DK, it's a potential option. I'm not saying it's the best because I haven't compared it. I think it's one of those things where it's more reasonable because you actually need magicka in that instance. I think Wretched Vitality is probably one of the best werewolf sets in the game. Werewolf, for those of you guys that don't know, their healing costs a metric fuck ton of magicka, and so oftentimes in the past people have run different foods or sets that gave mag sustain so that they could get heals off. This is the perfect set to run on a werewolf. I know nobody wants to hear me say that, except for the werewolf mains, but it's a good set for that reason. If you're a Stamden and you're trying to utilize Arctic Blast, even though it's not as good as it used to be, or whatever, that's an option. And then another option would be a Dark Cloak or Stamina Nightblade. If you guys go through and you check all the different patches over the years, there are lots of different Stamblade builds out there that are running 1,000, 1,500, closing in on 2,000 magicka recovery fully buffed with continuous attack potion and stuff like that. A lot of players like to play that cloaky, fast, kitey playstyle, and so in that sort of instance, Wretched Vitality might be good, not because of what it's giving you, but because of what you could replace it with. And so I wanted to show some stuff, and like I said, guys, I'm not saying it's best in slot. Honestly, I think it's very specific, and I think in this meta there could be other options that are quite a bit better, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. And I wanted to show that to you guys, and I wanted to kind of explain where I was coming from and all that. So what we did is we did exactly what he told us to do. We're going to compare it to Clever Alchemist. Now, you guys know me. You know I love Clever Alchemist. Clever Alchemist is one of my favorite sets in the game. I've been running it for years. When it was bugged last patch, a little piece of me died on the inside. That's just, no, it's not that important to me, but it really is one of my favorite sets. And yeah, it wasn't good for a while, and now it's back. And so we're going to compare Clever Alchemist. So I threw together a Wretched Vitality build that I've been trying to check out. I've been debating going back and forth between Shadowy Disguise and Dark Cloak. And so you can do this with either one. But my thought was Dark Cloak got nice buffs. You get the minor protection with it also. On top of that, like, it's actually a really good heal now. And so you can make a pretty cool little brawler blade. You can get to 40k health really easily. And so if you have mag sustain to utilize Dark Cloak a lot on a stamina Nightblade, that means you can stack more damage because your stamina sustain is going to be so much better. You're going to use Shade, you're going to use Cloak, whether it's Shadowy Disguise or Dark Cloak. So either way, you have some too expensive Magicka dump abilities. And Shadowy Disguise, great offensive skill to really go in and do some damage. So we're just going to utilize Shadowy Disguise in this build. But we got back bar Wretched, front bar Titanborn, Magma Incarnate, Titanborn, weapon damage infused with Death Dealer. I don't know about this. You can adjust your Mundus, you can do whatever, or you can say no Mundus, 3 Jewelry Titanborn, 2 Body Titanborn, and then front bar Vatishran 2H. You can do whatever, but we're just doing an apples to apples comparison. Back bar Wretched Vitality, there's a skill layout. So I put on the sets. I got Wretched Vitality with the buffs, Magma Incarnate buff, Death Dealers with its buffs. We have Continuous Attack, just so you can see it. We have our buffs, Major Brutality, Major Endurance, because we're gonna have Stamina, Endurance, Major Intellect with Tripods, stuff like that. Stamina Regen, Minor with Rally, all these sorts of things. You guys can feel free to pause and go back and make sure that I'm not messing it up. I'm not cheesing it behind your back or anything like that. It's on video. It's there for you to look at, so you guys can pause and compare and see where I'm wrong. 1821 CP, here's the layout. I'm not going to go through each individual tree. I don't think there's really a need to. I mean, at this point, if you looked at all this stuff and it's the exact same, why would this be any different, you know? But somebody will say it's different now that I said that, but whatever. So yeah, that's what our layout is. And then on the build editor, what you can do is you can click Save Build, and then you can create a copy, which is what we did. So we created a copy, and we put Clever Alchemist on the back bar. And so now we have our Clever Alchemist with our boosts of health and all those other sorts of fun things. And we have our build layout over here. So you still see the same thing. Titanborn front bar with our Robust, with our Death Dealers, Titanborn Maul sharpened, Clever Alchemist back bar just like we want it, with Magma Incarnate, Warrior Mundus Imperial Stage 3. If we go over here, Warrior Mundus. And I know, guys, you can do different Mundus stones. I know, Lover's more damage. We're just keeping it the same. We're trying to get the quote unquote most important stats the same so that we can compare the two things, and then we can move on. And so you see that those things are the same. The difference here, though, is I have 11 points in health on the Wretched Nightblade so that I can get to 34,700 health. Clever Alchemist has it built into the character sheet, so they have 34,686, a difference of 14 health, but no points in a health here, 64 points in a stamina. So that's one difference there on this character sheet, still stage 3 and everything. When we look at our character sheet, we have 2370, 2409 recovery. Now, this is with continuous attack. This is with the potions up. So roughly this is like 1900 unbuffed, which is roughly around what most cloaky dodge rolling Nightblades run. Some run a lot less. Some run a lot more. I know like Grim Hollow and I run roughly the same stamina recovery. It's somewhere around here in the 2k range, and when you fully buff, it turns out to 22, 23, 2400. That 15% Nightblade passive is quite nice. It scales quite a bit. So you see we have 2370 versus 2409. That's as close as I can get it. And so that's a few differences. In order to do that, we had to do Titanborn Amulet Robust here instead of Infused. So we did lose a little bit of weapon damage just to add a little bit more here, whereas Wretched has this. It's a small difference, but it's for the same amount of recovery. We want to try and get as close to these stats as possible, because whatever amount of sustain you run, like I said, I think this is just a general stamina Nightblade-ish amount of sustain for like outnumbered 1vx. I've seen 2,700, I've seen 3,000. I feel like 2,400 with continuous and potion buffs is pretty modest. But yeah, so we got that. As far as sets, we have Magma Incarnate, Death Dealers, Clever Alchemist, same thing as before. Skills, we do have our continuous attack, nothing else crazy over here or anything like that, so we're not cheating. We're not cheating, guys, all right? Major Brutality, Major Endurance. Like I said, you guys can go back, you can copy paste this, you can compare. It's literally the same thing, same buffs and everything. And now we're going to do our comparison, and we're going to look at some things. And so with Clever Alchemist fully buffed, with Orzorgas, which is what he mentioned, because if you want some magic recovery, which you probably will, some Nightblades will. I normally don't, but if you do, you can run Orzorgas if you want that mag sustain. You don't have to with a Wretched Nightblade. You can just run dual stat, because you're going to have so much mag sustain anyways. You don't need to run Orzorgas. And so the difference is here is you get some health with your dual stat food, and you get 5,000 stamina, which you don't get with Orzorgas. So you get 1k more health, you get about 5,000 more stamina. And although stamina doesn't scale in the way weapon damage does, it does give you some damage. It does. 10.4 stamina is 1 weapon damage, and obviously you don't have modifiers and everything, but it does have to be added into your overall build, which makes your overall damage quite a bit closer. If you look at the front, our spell physical penetration is 10,000. Physical penetration is 10,000. We literally have the same health, same recovery, stamina recovery, and the same amount of pen. And so now we're going to compare the weapon damage versus the recovery and see what the differences are. So because we're running dual stat, our stamina jumps up to 32k versus 29k. So we get a little bit of added damage there with Wretched. Obviously, Clever Alchemist has more weapon damage. That 69 is a great number on the front of the 6907 weapon damage, which makes it a little bit sexier in my opinion. It's way better than 6332 weapon damage because it has, like I said, it has 69 in front. But if you look at magic recovery, we got 1917 for Wretched versus 1669. And so although the other numbers are pretty close, you get about roughly almost 300 more. That's like 250 more magic recovery than you would running this with Orzorgas. Which what that means is if we wanted to get rid of our 30% magicka regen, for instance, we could drop it and we have 1568 versus 1669. We get so much recovery built in with Wretched that we no longer have to run tripods. We don't have to run tripods. The magic recovery is very close. If it's within 100, it's pretty close. When you start getting the 2 to 250 range, that's when it's like, okay, well, this is a noticeably larger area. Now, you don't have to change this, but this opens up your opportunity on your build to different potions. Maybe you want to run crit potions. There's health, stamina, crit, which means you could take off Camo Hunter if you wanted to. So you could replace Camo Hunter with another skill on your bar, if you so choose. Or you could run armor pots. There are health, stamina, or physical resistance pots, which would boost your physical resist. So you could have almost the exact same build, magicka, stamina recovery, health. The difference in damage with Clever Alchemist, which is the big one. You see our tooltip on our surprise attack is 12,817 versus 12,435. Clever Alchemist buffed for 20 seconds is roughly 3% more damage. Nobody's denying that Clever Alchemist is a better damage set. It 100% is. But when you're in a meta to where when I'm testing 150 gear white with no enchants versus my buddy, and I'm hitting 15k spectral bows, when there's so much damage built into the game, built into certain specs like Stamina Nightblade, do I need 3% more damage on a build in this specific meta? I would contend that you don't. I would contend that in this specific meta, you might want a little bit more survival. You might want to, since everybody is running high damage procs or other things, you might want to make some adjustments on that part to boost your survival. So maybe armor pots, physical armor pots, to deal with those Kalurians, Nightblade gankers when they're hitting you with in-cap and everything. Yes, it won't help you versus Kalurian's proc itself, but everything else in their combination it will. Those sorts of things might come in handy. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion. And now, like I said, I'm not saying that Wretched is a better set than Clever Alchemist or anything like that. I think this is going to come down to a little bit of preferences. But you see, when you do all these things and you get the build the exact same way, the difference between Clever Alchemist and Wretched, keep in mind, Wretched has 100% uptime on this damage, whereas Clever Alchemist is 20 out of, was it 20 out of the 15, 45, 48 seconds or whatever? Yeah, during the 20 out of 50 seconds. So, I mean, obviously it's more burst, but it's only 3% more burst. And so in some metas, there have been plenty of metas that have out there where you're squeezing out as much damage as possible. Now, does this apply to every class in the game? No, of course not. Like Stam DK, I'm running maybe 1,000, 1,200, maybe if I'm crazy, like 1,500 recovery on like a medium Stam Blade or Stam DK. On a Stam Crow, do you need a set like Wretched Vitality? No, of course not. Like, you don't need it on most setups. On most setups, you don't. But if you're like a Stam Blade where, for instance, your damage is just, you're just there. Like you have damage whether you're wearing no 5-piece sets or 5-piece sets. If you have damage regardless and you're killing most people and you actually need a little bit more survival, making this alternative to have armor pots would be better than backbarring a set like Clever Alchemist. You get similar, there's a 3% damage difference for 20 seconds, of course, but you get 6,000 resistances. So for all of the time. And so I'm not saying one is better than the other. I just think it's a lot closer than a lot of people think. And so, yeah, overall, I'm still messing around with Wretched Vitality in a few niche setups. It's an okay set. I wouldn't run it on most setups, but I feel like there's some cases, especially like a Dark Cloak build. If you wanted to run like Dark Cloak and you wanted to scale as much health as possible, I think it's an interesting option. Like I showed you, like with almost the exact same stats, I could run Dark Cloak and just have more recovery, more Dark Cloaks, more heals. Like my survival would be better for a 3% damage loss for 20 seconds. So those are the comparisons that you need to do when you compare these different builds. And Kuro was mostly right. Like he was mostly right, and he's not wrong. Like on most builds, you're not aiming for 2,400 stamina recovery. You're just not. You don't need 2,400 stamina recovery, or you don't need more than like 1,500 mag recovery on most mag specs. Most. So yeah, in most cases, it's not very good. But in some, it's an option. It's an option on how you want to go about doing things. Do you need that little bit more survival, or do you want to amp out that extra 3% for 20 seconds to really eat your opponents even more? So I'm going to leave it up to you. I'm going to leave you those comparisons. But yeah, when you're comparing different sets, don't compare just the 5-piece sets. It's the 5-piece sets with the enchants, traits, Mundus Stone, and food and potions versus all of that on the other side. Because you get so much recovery with Wretched, it allows you to potentially run like armor pots and other things like that. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not. But you have to take that into account when you're comparing these different sets. It's not just, hey, this is stat dense and it doesn't matter, you can run Orzorgas. Yeah, you can run Orzorgas, and then you miss out on an extra 1,000 health and an extra 5,000 stamina, which is also damage, which you have to take into account. So it's not that it's clearly better. It's honestly, it's probably a little bit closer than most people think. And so I'm going to leave this here. Obviously, there's a bunch of different set options. There's a bunch of different things to compare and all those other sorts of things. I just wanted to bring up one because Clever Alchemist is a great set. It really is. And so all of a sudden when you're on a Stam Blade and you're comparing a great set versus a new set and you get these small differences where it's like, okay, well, I could see that. That's where it comes down to decisions. And so, yeah, I know personally on Stam Blade right now, I could kill people in 2 tank sets and I would be fine. So 3% more damage on Clever Alchemist to me right now doesn't mean as much as, having a little bit more survival. So, but yeah, that's me. Maybe that's not you. Maybe you need a little bit more, or the people you're fighting are just way tankier and you need that little bit of 3%. But yeah, leave it up to you. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.